Hi everyone, I'm Matt from Look Into Bitcoin, and today we're going to be doing a quick video to look at the relation between the Bitcoin price and the underlying strength of the US dollar. To do this, we'll be using a number of resources, all freely available on lookintobitcoin.com, your number one source for Bitcoin information. If you haven't already, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to ensure you're receiving all of our content as soon as it's released. So right now we're just on the BTC USD weekly chart, and as you can see, I've already loaded up this indicator here, which is the correlation coefficient, and I've loaded this up on a 1-year rolling basis to compare the correlation between Bitcoin and the DXY, which is the dollar strength index. Now this may all sound a little confusing, but all this is doing is showing us the underlying strength of the US dollar and how closely the price action of that relates to the price action of Bitcoin. So this correlation indicator gives us a value between 1 and -1. When we have a value of 1, it indicates a perfect correlation. If one was to move up $1, the other would move up $1. And to go to the opposite, a negative correlation, a value of -1, would give us a perfect inverse relation in price. So as the DXY were to increase 1%, Bitcoin's price would decrease 1%. And what we can see when looking over a 52-week or yearly period, we can see for a vast majority of the time, there is a very negative inverse correlation between Bitcoin and the strength of the US dollar. Now, this is especially useful to take note of right now, especially given the current global political, economic, and just fundamental factors impacting global fiat currencies and especially the US dollar. Especially as inflation rates and general fears of a recession are looming, the US dollar has increased in value comparatively compared to most assets and other global currencies. This is due to just general risk appetite of most investors decreasing and looking for a safer alternative, being the US dollar. So as we've seen recently over the past few months, if we load up the DXY chart, we can see the actual value of the US dollar has increased substantially for a very prolonged period of time. If we look back over the past few years, we can see we're at the highest levels of DXY US dollar strength we have been for decades. One thing we can also observe, in light of the coronavirus pandemic, the actual supply of US dollars that were available increased substantially. So the chart I've loaded up here is the BTC USD chart we were looking at before, but rather than just being denominated in USD, this is actually being denominated in the M2 money supply, which is the total value of all global assets. So we can see when factoring in the actual underlying denomination of the US dollars versus Bitcoin, we can see Bitcoin is actually fairly substantially beneath its previous all-time high. When we compare this to the actual normal standard BTC USD chart, which looks a little bit more bullish than this, we can see potentially a lot of Bitcoin's previous bull cycle was driven more so by the actual supply of US dollars increasing substantially, along with the underlying strength of the US dollar decreasing to really drive us to substantially higher prices. However, the same can be true for the downside. The US dollar strength index increases substantially, has very much piled on the pressure for Bitcoin's downward price action. If we then use this data along with some more on-chain data, something like the stock flow metric we can see here on lookintobitcoin.com, we can see compared to most of Bitcoin's price history, we're actually at substantially oversold levels. So maybe if the US dollar decreases in strength, maybe if we get a halt or at least a decrease in the quantitative tightening that a lot of global governments are implementing, and maybe some quantitative easing potentially to help with global fundamental factors, inflation increasing, energy costs rising, we may get a positive reaction in the Bitcoin price, and maybe this stock flow model can become a little bit more accurate and useful. And finally, Bitcoin can maybe come to its fruition of its underlying and fundamental value as this model predicts. So just to summarize, Bitcoin for almost all of its price history has had an inverse correlation to the strength of the US dollar. And due to the current strength of the US dollar, we can see this is very much driving Bitcoin's price to the downside substantially. We can also see that while the US dollar has not only increased in value or strength, but has also increased in supply, which has further negatively impacted the price of BTC and most global markets. One thing to note is currently the strength of the US dollar is very much related to the global fundamental economic and political factors. Bitcoin may continue to struggle until we finally begin to see some more positive future outlooks and a shift in global sentiment. If you like this video, then please visit lookintobitcoin.com, where you can consider becoming a site subscriber to gain access to live chats, in-depth newsletters, indicator alerts, private trading view scripts, and more, all for a fraction of the standard industry price. And please let me know in the comments down below, what are your thoughts on the Bitcoin price action currently? Do you think we're about to see a potential explosion to the upside in price, or maybe are we going to set new lows? Let me know in the comments down below. I look forward to reading and replying to all of them. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.